defenseman. Monahan parked in front. Talks to Caulfield. Fires. Scores!
You are about to enter Habs After Dark with Recliner Sports.
3, 2, 1, 0.
Welcome, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. We are back in the Hali Tiki Room tonight. We're taking a little bit of a break from our studio. My mother is in town, and my studio seconds as her spare bedroom. So we're back in the Tiki Bar. Canadiens suffer a 5-4 loss to the Columbus Blue Jackets. A loss that I think was best described at the end of the game by the RDS announcers as heartbreaking. Might be a bit of an exaggeration, but I think it's not a bad way to describe that loss. It was a game I think the Canadiens deserved a better result. I thought they played good enough to win. They were good enough to win. I think they were better overall from beginning to end than the Columbus Blue Jackets were. But we'll get into it. Anyways, happy holidays. Happy Tibbs Eve to all of you Maritimers out there, particularly the Newfoundlanders. If you're any of you are Newfoundlanders or watching, welcome to the show. Welcome to Habs After Dark. My name is Devin. As I said, we're back in the Hali Tiki Room just temporarily right now. But hopefully that won't change anything. I'm working off my laptop. Everything should be fine. Technically, I hope we will do our best. I see that we have a few people in the room. We have James and we have Claude. James is commenting about the referees. Can't stand the refs and their biased calls. The Galley penalty was bullshit, and I hope they never ref another game. I have a hard time disagreeing with that, James. I have a really hard time disagreeing with that. I know it's kind of cliche to blame the referees, but you know, the referees are absolute trash in the NHL. They're just absolute garbage. They do absolutely nothing to bring any type of level of fairness to the games. It's just the officiating in the NHL is a disaster. I talk about it game in and game out. I'm a broken record. I'm sure you're tired of hearing it. It's just pure hot garbage tonight, right? But we'll get into that some more as we go on. We'll talk about it some more. I thought the refereeing played a huge role in deciding tonight's game. In any event, again, positive signs for the Canadiens. Again, I think this was, despite the loss, another positive game for the Montreal Canadiens. It's another step. I think they're still moving in the right direction. This isn't a game where we look and say, oh, well, they've, taken a step backwards. They've regressed. They're going back to their old ways. I think this is the kind of game, you're not going to win every game. And this is the kind of game where I think they deserved a better lot. I thought they played well. I thought there were a lot of really positive things that came out of it. So let's talk about some of those positive things, right? What I've been doing lately is sort of talking about winning habits that winning hockey teams have, and are the Canadiens showing winning habits? So one of the winning habits that they've been showing, or in fact, it's more of a situation. It's actually a losing habit that they used to have, that they certainly haven't had of late, and they certainly didn't have tonight, is their inability to deal with a setback, their inability to adapt to adverse situations, right? When things go wrong, how do they respond to that? Do they fall apart? Do they lose their control? Do they lose, their system? Do they lose their shape? Do they fall apart, right? We've seen that throughout the first 30 or so games of the year, where, they would, be playing pretty well, and then, the other team scores a goal, and then they kind of fall apart, and then the other team scores another goal, and then the other team scores another goal, and before you know it, they're down 2 or 3 goals, and the game is gone, right? Their ability to lose a game in a very short period of time. Tonight, I thought they did a very good job of not just responding, but rebounding from adversity. First period, they didn't look great. They got off to a slow start. Columbus was probably the better team. I confess that I missed the first 10 minutes of the game. I was out skating on the Emira Oval here in Halifax, so I wasn't able to get to the very beginning of the game. But, from what I saw in the latter half of the first period and what I can tell from looking at the statistics from the first half of the second period of the first period, they were outplayed. The Canadiens were certainly outplayed in that first period, but again, they didn't allow it to sort of control the whole game. They didn't allow that first period to define the result of the game. They found it within themselves to come back, to play better, to become the better team, to dominate the second period, and as well, be the better team in the third period. They certainly were in a position to win the game. They went into the third period with a lead. Unfortunately, they let it get away from them for various reasons, some of which were within their control, some of which were not, and we're going to talk about it. So that, I think, is a positive, the sense that the Canadiens dealt with the adversity of the poor first period, the bad start, the adversity of losing Patrik Laine. Right, Patrik Laine goes out, doesn't come back for the second period. Again, as the announcers on RDS said, it was quite clear that Columbus had made a decision to target him. I don't know whether they were, simply, trying to make sure that he didn't impact the game the way he has in recent times for Montreal, or whether there was some level of animosity over him being a former Columbus Blue Jacket, and maybe some of the comments that he made in the media prior to the game. But in any event, the Columbus Blue Jackets were not going. They were going out of their way to hit Patrik Laine at every opportunity. Some clean, some not so clean, and they managed to knock him out of the game. Again, the referees, when the referees are not doing their job, that becomes a much easier thing to do, right? It's much easier to target another player and to take advantage of that when the referees aren't doing their job. They're not calling penalties the way they're supposed to call them, or the way we've been told that they would call them, or the way that they've called them in the past. So the Canadiens dealt with that adversity. They didn't fall apart when Laine came out of the lineup. They very well could have. We saw how they reacted and responded to his injury in the preseason. It wasn't very good. And tonight they dealt, I think, with that adversity a lot better. And they came back essentially to bring themselves back into the game. I think they were down 2-0. Yeah, 2-0 after the first period. They came back and, took a lead into the third period. So let's go through the scoreboard, guys. I see there's not a lot of action in the comments here. I don't know who is in the live right now. Let's see if we can check it out. Doesn't look like there's a huge crowd of you in there at the moment, but we will go through the scoreboard. If you are here, feel free to jump in. Feel free to comment. If you have any questions along the way, please don't hesitate to ask them. If you've got, you want to put in your 2 cents worth, then we're happy to hear it as well. We have so far in the chat right now, we have nobody in the chat. So I'm talking to myself right now, which is fine because hopefully some of you will show up here shortly. Then hopefully some of you will also watch this in a replay later on. So we'll continue. We'll move on to our scoreboard, which is right here. And we'll have a look at it. We'll go through the game quickly. We'll go through the goals and the assists. We have 9 goals to go through, so there's quite a few of them. So we see the final score 5-4. The shots on goal were 32-31 in favor of the Canadiens. Again, another performance where the Canadiens are able to get over 30 shots in a game. They hadn't done that for the better part of the season. They've now done it twice in their last 3 games. So it's a bit of a step in the right direction. But let's go through the goals. We already, we already mentioned that the Canadiens did come out of that first period with a 2-0 deficit. The first goal of the game was actually scored about 45 seconds after I sat down to watch the game. Like I said, I missed the first 10 minutes or so. At 12:03, Dmitry Voronkov with his 9th of the season, assisted by Monahan and Marchenko. The puck gets dumped into the zone. It looks like it might be an icing call. Samuel Montembeault decides he's not going to take a chance. However, he doesn't do a very good job of clearing the puck. He just kind of fires it into the corner, and it kind of hits the corner and bounces right back out. The puck ends up behind the net eventually. Nick Suzuki turns it over behind the net. He's trying to battle, and he's trying to make a pass to Lane Hudson behind the net. The pass gets intercepted. Monahan ends up with the puck behind the net. He passes in front of the net to Voronkov, and Voronkov beats Sean Monahan. I have SM35 written on my notes here. He beats not Sean Monahan, but Samuel Montembeault. He beats him 5-hole with a pretty soft shot. He actually fans on the shot. He doesn't get anything on the shot. And unfortunately, it gets past Montembeault. Not a great goal for Montembeault. Probably should have made the save. With the fan shot, it was a bit deceptive. But again, it's one he probably should have stopped. And one that I wonder whether he would have stopped if he wasn't playing his 10th game in a row and his 3rd game in 4 nights. About 6 minutes later, just at the very end of the first period, the Columbus Blue Jackets take a 2-0 lead. It's another pretty soft goal for the Montreal Canadiens to allow. This goal is scored by Kent Johnson. He gets the puck. The puck comes from behind the net. Mathieu Olivier wins a battle behind the net. He kind of feeds the puck, and the puck ends up sort of along the boards on the outside hash mark, and Kent Johnson kind of fires a harmless wrist shot towards the net, probably not expecting it to go in, and it just goes over Samuel Montembeault's shoulder. He's not really ready for the shot. He doesn't seem ready for the play. Again, another one that I think he probably would tell you he would expect to stop. Certainly one we've come to expect him to stop in recent games. And again, he allows 2 pretty soft goals in the first period for the Canadiens to go down 2-0. Again, I don't think there's any doubt that Columbus was the better team in the first. However, those are both goals that we would expect Samuel Montembeault to stop. There were shots in that period that he stopped were tough shots. I mean, the shots on goal were 11-6 in favor of Columbus, but he doesn't save the 2 that count. And the Canadiens go down 2-0 after the first period. Again, the shots are 11-6 for, it says there, Detroit, because I didn't change that, but it is, of course, Columbus. The scoring opportunities, high danger scoring chances are 7-3 in favor of Columbus, and the expected goals are 1.6 to 0.5. So, again, a dominant period by Columbus. They are the much better team. Montembeault does make a number of saves. However, he does let 2 soft goals in, and the Canadiens are down 2-0. So at this point, you're kind of thinking, are we kind of slipping a little bit back into our old ways? Are the Canadiens kind of going back to the way they've played through the first, 30, 35 games of the season? Are we getting ready for another game where we're going to kind of be disappointed and upset and, talking about how, this team needs this team needs that? The fans kind of like to freak out a little bit. However, they come out real quickly, right? They came out in the second period, and just 2 minutes into the second period, they score their first goal of the game. It's David Savard. Savard comes in on net. He shoots a puck wide, way wide, misses net by a lot. Nick Suzuki is able to recover the puck, and he passes to Cole Caulfield, who's down low, sort of on the goal line. Cole Caulfield then kind of curls up back towards the point, and as he's doing so, he takes a shot on goal. The shot misses on the short side, wide of the net. However, it caroms off the backboards right to David Savard, who luckily is standing, beside the net on the opposite side of the net. Puck's on his stick, and before the Columbus goaltender can make a move or react at all, David Savard puts the puck into the empty net. So it's 2-1. The Canadiens look like they're back in the game. They're playing all right. However, it is a little bit short-lived. Columbus regains its 2-goal lead, a goal by former Montreal Canadien Jordan Harris, his first of the year, assisted by Marchenko and Monahan. which is, you're going to hear that all night long. Marchenko, Monahan, right? They assisted on the first goal. They assisted on the third goal. Good hustle by Marchenko to win the race. He's chasing down the puck as it's going into the Montreal zone. He beats the Canadian defender to the puck. He kind of just, he does a bit of a backhand, through his legs kind of thing where he just kind of fires the puck backwards towards the front of the net. It ends up on Monahan's stick. Monahan can't really handle the pass. And the puck kind of is kind of up on edge, and it's, at the top of the circles at the center of the ice. And Jordan Harris just kind of walks in, Johnny on the spot, and he just sort of steps into one, right? He's at, full pace skating, and he just steps into one, and he fires a blast. And another one that Samuel Montembeault probably should have had, right? Another one he should have had. So again, we're gonna question whether or not, his 10th consecutive start, his third start in 4 nights, maybe had an impact on Montembeault. Each of the first 3 goals are ones that we normally would expect him to stop. Again, another opportunity for the Canadiens to get down on themselves, to perhaps, shut down and have a bit of an emotional letdown. But they don't. They come back shortly thereafter, about 4 minutes later. Lane Hutson scores his second goal of the year, assisted by Slavkovsky and Caulfield. It's sort of on the tail end of a power play. The power play just finishes. Slavkovsky wins a board battle. He makes a nice cross ice pass, like all the way across the ice from one corner of the offensive zone to the other, from Slavkovsky to Lane Hutson. Hutson gets the puck sort of at the point. He skates in towards the net through the circle, and he takes a wrist shot on goal, and the puck deflects off the stick of a Columbus defender and beats Graves. Is it Graves or Greaves? I'm not sure. I think it's Graves. The French announcers were calling him Greaves, but I think his last name is actually Graves. So yeah, the shot deflects off the Columbus defender and it beats Graves, and the score is 3-2 at this stage. So then about 5 minutes later, Jake Evans scores his third goal in 3 games, assisted by Heineman and Savard at 12:45. A really nice transition play, right? The Canadiens create a turnover. They get the puck in the defensive zone. David Savard with a really nice headman pass to Emil Heineman. Emil Heineman hits Jake Evans with a pass. Jake Evans is kind of, he's kind of, rushing through the zone at top speed, and Emil Heineman hits him, right on stride, and Jake Evans, he surprises the Columbus defenders, and he gets by both of them, and he's in all alone on Graves. So he goes in all alone on Graves, and he beats him with a quick shot, low glove side. Again, the Canadiens have struggled a little bit with their breakaway type opportunities. Well, Jake Evans appears to be the best on the team. He doesn't really miss when he gets those opportunities, certainly over the last little while. So at the end of 2 periods, I actually said earlier that the Canadiens had a lead going into the third period. They actually were tied going into the third period. The score is 3-3 after 2. The Canadiens are they're up 6. Well, they lead 10-8 in the second period on shots on goal. They're now 16-19 or 19-16 in favor of Columbus, but the Canadiens do outshoot, Columbus in that second period. 2-0. Hey, Run with Kings, what's going on, man? Good to see you. The Canadiens are 2-0 on high danger scoring chances in that period, and the expected goals are 1.3 to 1.0. So again, a better period for Montreal. They bounce back from a fairly poor first period. They managed to tie the game up, even though they were down 2-0. And the other statistics seem to be in their favor. They seem to be coming around a little bit. So we're all lined up for a third period, and the Canadiens have an opportunity to sort of make a comeback and come back from that early 2-0 deficit. And so they come out, and right away in the third period, what do? Well, they score a goal, right? Instead of sort of letting down, as we've seen them do in the past, they come out and they score a goal. 20 seconds into the third period, Yoel Armia from Evans and Carrier. Again, Carrier is battling for the puck along the boards. It's a good long battle. He fights hard. He wins the battle. He gets the puck to Jake Evans. Jake Evans kind of gets the puck, and instead of just firing it to the front of the net right away, he kind of hesitates and does a little bit of a spinorama. And off the spinorama, he just fires the puck to the front of the net, where Yoel Armia is standing, and Yoel Armia just kind of swipes at the puck. He kind of chops at the puck, a one-time chopper kind of thing. And when he does, the puck beats Graves through the 5-hole. And at that point, Graves looks like he's kind of he's kind of out of it a little bit. Like, he doesn't look like he's that good. He's struggling. There's a few shots after that goal in the third period where he kind of looks shaky or whatever. And the Canadiens don't manage to take advantage of it. They, I thought they might start just firing shots on him, but they don't. They're not able to. And they just can't do it. So the Canadiens have their first lead of the game at this point. They're up 4-3. However, shortly thereafter, Columbus gets a very, very dubious power play. The referees were terrible for the most part tonight. It's just an absolute abomination of a game by the referees tonight. Dmitry Voronkov scores from Marchenko and Werenski. It's a power play goal. It's a set play, right? The puck is passed down from Werenski to Marchenko, who's on the goal line, and Marchenko, one touch passes it to the slot where Dmitry Voronkov is standing, and he just one-times the puck past Samuel Montembeault. It's just a quick set play, tic-tac-toe. Not much Montembeault can do on that play. It's just a really nice goal. They've done it before. It's something they work on. And unfortunately, the Canadiens weren't able to get their sticks into the passing lanes and break it up. And the score is tied again. Now it's 4-4. Canadiens have given up that short-lived lead. And then we have the backbreaker, the goal that ends it, the goal that kills the Canadiens. They're dominating the play in the third period. They just can't manage to get a goal. They're getting all kinds of scoring chances. Everything's going their way. But at 17:48, Kirill Marchenko scores from Monahan and Werenski. Monahan gets the puck in the defensive zone. He just kind of does a big high flip shot into the neutral zone. Marchenko manages to get the puck before anybody else can. He gets the puck in the neutral zone. He skates across the blue line, and he's sort of one-on-one with Mike Matheson. And as he comes up to Mike Matheson, he kind of uses Matheson as a screen, and he fires a laser of a wrist shot that kind of, beats Samuel Montembeault bar down. There's really, again, you might expect Montembeault to make the save, but it's a really good shot. It's a laser shot. Monahan is definitely screening, Monahan. Matheson is, definitely screening the shot, and the score is 5-4. The Canadiens pull their goalie. Unfortunately, they're not able to get anything going, and that is the way the game ends. The shots in the third period are 15-13 for Montreal. Montreal ends up leading overall in the game, 32-31 in shots. The high danger scoring chances, again, there's a mistake on my scoreboard there. Not very good, Devin. It should read 13-13 and not 8-4. The shots, the high danger scoring chances in the third period were 8-6 in favor of Montreal, and the expected goals were 1.4 to 1.3, and Columbus ends up with 3.9 expected goals to 3.2 on the night. So that's it for the scoreboard, guys. I see there's a few more people in the chat. Let's see if we can answer some questions and get some conversation going here, guys. Excellent game, except for the result. I agree with that, Claude. C'était un bon match pour le Canadien ce soir. Ils ont bien joué. Ils ont dû avoir un meilleur résultat, mais c'est difficile pour eux. Ils vont pas gagner tous les matchs, mais pour moi, c'est pas un match où c'est un pas en arrière. C'est un bon match. Et pour moi, on a certainement, on aurait préféré une victoire, mais c'est pas un match terrible pour le Canadien, à mon avis. Run with Kings. Could Monty be better at using his stick to block those passes? Yeah, I don't think there's anything he could do on that one. This wasn't one of those cross crease plays where we saw. I think there were a couple of goals like that against Pittsburgh. and maybe another one against, I can't remember who it was. This was a situation where Werenski's got the puck sort of in the sort of the Patrick Laine spot, right? That that left face-off dot, and he feeds the puck down to Marchenko, I think it is, who has his skates on the goal line, and then Marchenko kind of passes the puck into the high slot, or the right on the home plate area. And it's just quick. It's like bang, bang, bang. Everything's a one touch, right? There's no hesitation. So again, I don't know that there's anything Montembeault could do to poke check that one. Certainly the ones where they make that cross crease pass, you might say that the goalie could do a better job of maybe trying to break that up. But again, it's a hard thing to do too, right? If the goalie goes for the poke check on that play, where they're firing the puck across the crease to a guy who's sitting on the far post, if you go for the poke check, you kind of break down your own positioning as a goaltender, and you run the risk of that guy faking you out, and then sort of going short side on you, or alternatively, a puck bounces in off a defender or off another player who's also trying to break up the play, and because you've committed to a poke check, now you're not in a very good position to stop that play. So Matheson had a rough game. Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that. I don't know how rough his game was. I thought he looked all right to me. I will have a look at the stats to see if I'm right or not. Yeah, his numbers aren't ideal, but they're not sort of terrible either. I didn't think Matheson looked bad to me tonight. Was it his best game? No, I don't. But again, I wouldn't have singled him out as the guy who struggled tonight. That wouldn't have been the guy I would have picked out. Is Laine's injury serious? It doesn't sound like it, Claude, but I don't want to say because I don't know. The reason I say it doesn't sound like Laine's injury is serious is because they did leave the door open to the possibility he might return to the game. They didn't sort of, after the first period, they didn't say, he's out, he's definitely not coming back. They said, he's questionable and there's a possibility he could come back. So, in that sense, it leads me to believe that it's not something that they looked at right away and said, oh my God, you're gone, you're done. You got to go to the hospital, or you got to do this, or you got to do that. So, in that sense, I get the feeling that it's not serious, but again, I have no firm basis to base that on. So I'm not I don't want to commit to anything. So I really don't know. Just thought being scored so close. I thought he could use his stick, but you're right. Yeah, it's a different. Yeah, I don't think that's a play where he really could use the poke check. But again, there have been goals this year where the puck kind of gets fired across the crease. I remember in particular, I think there was that 9-2 game against Pittsburgh. There was at least one goal, maybe two in that game that were scored that way on the power play. But on this particular play, I don't think it was one where he could have done that. Was on the wrong end of just about everything. Okay, I don't agree. I don't agree with it. Whether coach did or not, I don't feel like he was on the wrong end of everything. I thought he set up some nice plays offensively. I don't know that I could really blame him on that fifth goal by Marchenko at the end of the game. I mean, he's just doing his job. It was hard for him to do anything different on that. I don't see that he had any sort of significant number of turnovers. Let's see what we're talking about for giveaways tonight. Yeah, he had 4 giveaways. So I guess, yeah, I mean, that's not ideal. 4 defensive zone giveaways is not ideal. So I didn't, as I said, I didn't see the first 10 or 11 minutes of the game. So, there may have been some stuff there that I missed, but yeah, maybe. Was he playing on the wrong side tonight? He was partnered for the most part with Lane Hudson tonight. So yeah, so he would have been playing on his offside. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, that's going to be an issue for the Canadiens. They're going to have to find the guys who are better or are able to play on their offside. Gouli has shown that he's able to do it, but he's also shown that he's a lot better on his strong side. Interestingly enough, one of the guys who's shown that he's really good at playing on his offside is Jaden Struble, right? Jaden Struble has shown, the capability of playing on the right side despite being a lefty, and he's done it quite well. And unfortunately, he seems to be the odd man out right now with the trade for Alexandre Carrier. It seems like he is going to be the seventh defenseman, and that he's not going to get a lot of opportunity. So we shall see. I mean, in a perfect world, we would hopefully, Logan Mailloux will figure himself out and get to the NHL, but it looks like he is probably going to spend the better part of the rest of this year down in Laval. I don't see him making the move back to Montreal anytime soon. His game has kind of struggled a little bit, so that's unfortunate, and we'll have to keep an eye on that. But another right-handed defenseman, would be ideal. Especially, again, we want a right-handed defenseman who is capable. It's not just a matter of getting anybody, and that's why Alexandre Carrier is good. Although we got rid of another right-handed defenseman to get him. Again, Justin Barron, again, not being the greatest defenseman, and he has obviously struggled and has a hard time defending in the NHL, but at the same time, it's just like that elusive right-handed defenseman. David Reinbacher injured. Logan Mailloux just doesn't seem to be able to put it all together. Well, I think he's struggling a little bit defensively, Jason. I think he's struggled the last 2 or 3 weeks. Adam Engstrom is getting his opportunities, but if I'm not mistaken, Adam Engstrom is a lefty, which is not a problem. Obviously, if he's a good defenseman, that's great. But the quality right-handed defenseman at the NHL level has been elusive for the Montreal Canadiens. Like right now, the only two they have are Carrier and David Savard. I know a lot of people are playing, Monday morning quarterback on the Jonathan Kovacevic move. I will say proudly, because I can back it up with receipts, I was one of the ones who was surprised that they got rid of Jonathan Kovacevic. There's a lot of people out there that are looking back on it and sort of retrospectively saying it was a mistake, but those people weren't saying that at the time. In retrospect, it would be nice if they had Jonathan Kovacevic on the team still. It would be nice to have that right-handed defenseman who I thought played a pretty solid defensive game for the Canadiens last year. Am I going to say it was a bad trade or a bad move to get rid of him? No, I'm not. Because I think, with the circumstances that presented themselves to management at the time, the move to get rid of Kovacevic made sense. However, again, you can go back and look at things that I posted online at the time. I had Kovacevic penciled in as a second pairing defenseman. In fact, I even had him penciled in as a first pairing defenseman in some aspects, because he was right-handed and because he was so solid defensively. Right, I think he was the only defenseman on the Montreal Canadiens last year who finished with a positive plus-minus. Again, plus-minus being a largely useless stat, but when you have a team that is in the minus 50 goal differential, and you're a defenseman who, I think Kovacevic, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe his plus-minus last year was a plus 11. It's an indication that you are doing something right. Certainly on the defensive side of things. And so, again, I'm not going to criticize the Canadiens for moving Jonathan Kovacevic, because I think, given the situation and the circumstances and the sort of crowded defensive core that the Canadiens had at the end of last year, I don't think it was a bad move, but, it certainly would be nice to have a steady right-handed defenseman in the lineup right now. Although I guess the question then would become, who are you moving? Like who's whose place would he take, right? Is he taking Matheson's place? Is he taking Goulie's place? Is he taking Jack Guy's place? Like, whose place is he taking? Like, whose place is he taking? Savard? Hudson? It's a tough one. So, the problem is if Kovacevic was here, they have picked up Carrier, who would sit Matheson. Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean, Jason. But again, I think it would be nice to have another steady right-handed defenseman to go to. But again, like you say, which of the four lefties are you then going to sit? Is it Goulet? Is it Jack Guy? Is it Hudson? Is it Matheson? It's tough, right? Like right now, there's a glut of left-handed defensemen, and I mean, as much as I like Mike Matheson, he is going to I don't know. It's hard to say. I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, obviously I don't think Hudson's going anywhere. I don't think that I'm, making any news by saying that. I personally don't think that Jack Guy should be going anywhere. I think Jack Guy should be penciled in. I think he's earned his spot. I think he's, subject to something going really, really wrong down the road. I think he's solidified at his spot there. And I mean, you would say the same for Goulet. So, what are you going to do? Like, who's the odd man out in that situation? If a lefty's got to go, if you want to even it up so that you've got three lefties and three righties, who's the odd man out? Like, if you've got to get rid of one of Jack Guy, Goulet, Hudson, and Matheson, who's the guy who's going to go? So, yeah, Harris, Johnny on the spot. He had a good opportunity, Claude. Claude says Harris had a nice goal. Yeah, he was Johnny on the spot. He had a great opportunity. The puck was sitting there for him, and, he fired a shot. Again, I think that Montembeault, we would hope that he would make that save more times than not. I think there were probably a few goals tonight that Montembeault probably normally would have. But again, playing the third game in 4 nights, I personally don't think it was a great idea to play him 3 out of 4 nights. I mean, I don't give a rat's ass about, how poorly Caden Primo has played so far this year. You've got to put him in the net. You've got to put him in the net. You've either got to give him you've either got to, to make a trade and get another backup, or you've got to put him in the net. You can't jeopardize, what Samuel Montembeault is doing right now by putting him in goal 10 games in a row and putting him in the net 3 nights, 3 games in 4 nights. You're putting him at risk of injury. You're putting him at risk of playing a bad game and losing his confidence. And all of a sudden you're back to, the Samuel Montembeault that we saw at times, through the first 30 games of the season where he was inconsistent. You've got to put Primo in the net. You have to. If you're not going to move him, you've got to put him in the net. Right? I don't think it's an option to send him to Laval. I don't think it's an option to put him on waivers. I don't think it's an option to bring up Dobesh or Connor Hughes. But you got to do something. You got to make a trade. You got to go out and find, a backup who can fill that role if you're not satisfied with him. But otherwise, you've got to put him in the net. You've got to back up for a reason, and the main reason you've got to back up is because your starter shouldn't be playing those kind of games and those kind of numbers. I think Matheson might eventually be the odd man out because Hudson will do that job. Yeah, I think that's probably a fair statement. I've always been a guy who kind of, liked the idea of keeping Matheson around. I like what he brings to the team. I like his leadership. I like the fact that he is a Montrealer. I like a lot of things about his game on and off the ice. I like him. I think that he brings a lot. However, if we look at it the way we just did with, the left-handed defenseman that we have, whether it's, Hudson, Goulet, Jack Guy, Struble, Engstrom, Konyushkov is a righty, which is an interesting. He's a guy that we often forget about. Konyushkov is right-handed, so he could be a bit of a wild card in all of this as well. But yeah, Matheson may be the odd man out. He may eventually be the odd man out. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know. Should be interesting. It'll be really interesting to see. But the Canadiens do have to do something about their sort of imbalance of right and left-handed defensemen. They got to do something about it. And right now, it doesn't look like Mailloux is on the fast track. Engstrom, let's confirm that Engstrom is a lefty. I'm almost certain that that's the case. You guys could probably check it just as fast as I could, but I will have a quick look. Where am I going to go? I'm going to go here. I'm going to go Engstrom, DB, and he is a lefty. Yeah. So, yeah. We have to put Primo on waivers. The coach has no trust in him. It's obvious you ain't playing at all. Well, again, Frank, we've had this conversation a number of times. I will repeat it for you again. The option to put Caden Primo on waivers is not a smart one. It's not smart. It makes absolutely no sense. I've told you this before. If you put Primo on waivers, one of two things is going to happen. One, he's going to get claimed by another team. Two, he's going to go down to Laval. Okay? So let's say he gets claimed by another team. Now the organization is left with one less goalie than they had before, right? So now you're forced to bring up one of the goalies from Laval, and now you're left with, trying to find somebody to replace one of your goalies in Laval, right? So Dobesh is not ready to come up to the NHL. And so if Dobesh comes up, one, he may not be any better than Primo was. Two, you might stunt his growth. You might hurt his development. You're bringing him up before he's ready. You're putting him into situations that he's not ready for, and you have the potential of ruining his confidence and setting him back as far as his development into possibly being an NHL goalie down the road. Connor Hughes is not an option because he's played a grand total of 13 games in the American Hockey League. So the idea that a guy who's played 13 games in the American Hockey League is going to come to the NHL and be an adequate goaltender, even if it is just as a backup, is it's just ridiculous. It's one of these sort of fantasy things that a lot of Montreal Canadiens fans just think that they can say stuff and that it'll magically happen. You cannot rationally and intelligently say that a goalie with 13 games of American Hockey League experience has a legitimate or significant chance of becoming an adequate goaltender in the NHL, even if it is just as a backup. So that's the scenario if Caden Primo doesn't clear waivers, if he gets picked up by another team. If Caden Primo does clear waivers, well, then you send him down to Laval. So now what are you going to do? So now you're faced with the same situation. Now you've got three goalies in Laval, so you're going to bring up one of those three goalies, presumably. It's not going to be Primo, obviously. So it's presumably going to be Dobesh, who we've already established is not ready, and you run a serious risk of stunting his growth and hurting his development by bringing him up now and putting him in a scenario, one, that he's not ready for, and two, that, it's a tough spot to put anybody in, let alone a young goalie who's a rookie. And again, Connor Hughes is not that goalie. He's not there yet. So the reality is putting Caden Primo, no matter how many times you say it, Frank, no matter how many times you repeat it over and over and over again, despite no matter how many times I tell you that it doesn't make sense and you say it anyway, putting Caden Primo on waivers is not an intelligent thing. It's not an informed statement. If you're going to criticize, you have some level of obligation to actually inform yourself and educate yourself about it. So saying that you're going to put Caden Primo on waivers is just, it's asinine. It makes no sense. It's dumb. Because one, it's not going to happen. The other thing you have to keep in mind too is that the Canadiens aren't just going to sacrifice Laval, right? They have an interest. They have a vested interest in Laval doing well, right? They want Laval to have a good season. They have a lot of youngsters playing in Laval who are developing, and part of their development is playing on a good team, right? They want Laval to do well. They want Laval to make the playoffs. They want Laval to go on a playoff run. They want these guys, these young guys, Owen Beck, Luke Tuck, Florian Jacki, Logan Mailloux, all of those young players, they want them to experience that type of thing. That is an experience that will make them better players down the road, right? A playoff run, a playoff, playing in the playoffs, making a run at a championship. So the Canadiens have an interest in Laval's success, and they're not going to just, throw that away by dragging their number one goalie up to Montreal mid-season and having nobody to replace him. So these are all things that you have to think about before you just sort of come out and blindly and randomly say, oh, we have to put some so-and-so on waivers, right? It's not as simple as that. And again, I get it. Maybe you don't think of all that stuff, but I've told you that at least half a dozen times over the last 2 or 3 weeks, Frank. So that's the scenario, right? And so right now, the fact that they haven't done something, they haven't gone out and gotten somebody, they haven't gone out and signed or traded for an adequate backup, they have to put Primo in the nets. They have to put him in. They have to give him they have to play him, because playing Montembeault 3 times in 4 nights, runs the risk. If you lose Montembeault, then you're supremely screwed. If Montembeault gets hurt, or Montembeault loses his confidence, or Montembeault, somehow, falters because you're overplaying him, now you've done yourself an additional disservice. Now you've got 2 goalies that are struggling. So even if Primo is going to struggle, you have to put him in the net. You have to. When do you think they're going to be playing him? I figured you would have been playing one of these games here that just went by. The coach has no trust in him. Yes, it certainly appears that the coach has a lack of confidence. I'm not going to say he has no trust in him. It appears that the coach has a lack of trust in Caden Primo right now. And I don't know what that's all about. I don't, I guess I do know what it's all about. Caden Primo has struggled. However, if you're not going to bring somebody in to replace him, you have to play him. You have to play him. What would have happened tonight, Frank, if because he was tired and because he had played 3 games in 4 nights, what if Samuel Montembeault had got injured? Then what kind of situation do the Canadiens find themselves in? Well, they're off until the 28th, Jason. But that doesn't change the fact that by playing 3 games in 4 nights, you run the risk of getting injured. It doesn't change the fact that playing 3 times in 4 nights, you run the risk of, having a really bad game that can hurt your confidence, right? It's not like it's Carey Price in nets, who, you're not really that concerned about, his confidence or whatever. Like Samuel Montembeault has shown us this year, like recently, that he's capable of having a crisis of confidence and struggling. So, that's where do I think that the Canadiens are trying to find a replacement for Caden Primo? I would expect they are. But again, putting him on waivers isn't an option. Like I don't get that. Doesn't make sense. Anyways, let's go to the A team, guys. We talked about some of these guys already, but we'll go quickly here to the A team. We'll publish this. So tonight's A team for me, we have Yoel Armia, we have Arbor Jacki, we have Christian Dvorak, and we have Kirby Dach. I thought Yoel Armia was really good tonight on both ends of the ice. Good penalty kill. He was getting some scoring chances. He had a goal. He was all over the ice. He was skating well. He played on that first power play as a replacement for when Patrick Laine went out. I thought he looked really good. I thought he had a really nice game tonight. Arbor Jacki continues to be a steady, solid defenseman, right? Just steady. Like his underlying numbers tonight were really, really good. He just wasn't on the ice for very many scoring chances against, and he was on the ice for some scoring chances for. So just a really steadying force on the back end on that third pairing. Him and David Savard both looked good tonight. Savard with a goal, right? His first goal of the year. So yeah, I've been impressed with Jacki. I think, since probably game 10 or 12 of the season, Jacki's been great, right? Remember how everyone wanted Jacki everyone, again, Frank, right? A guy that everybody wanted to see disappear. Arbor Jack guy, he's not going to be any good in the NHL. He can't control his emotions. The preseason, everyone was ready to quit on Arbor Jack guy. Just relax. He'll come around. He'll be fine. Dvorak, 2 games in a row, right? He was a A-team member in our last game, and he made the A-team tonight. I thought he was really good. He looks really, he's playing well out there. He's got good line mates. I think that whole line is playing, quite well. I mean, Gallagher has kind of fallen off with the goals. He hasn't scored in a while, but I think they're still playing good hockey. Him and Anderson and Dvorak. It's been a really solid line. And Kirby Dach, I thought he played really well tonight. I don't know. Some of you might disagree with that. I thought he was playing well in the first period. And, just as his luck would have it, he's playing well in that first period. And his line mate, gets injured and comes out of the game, right? He's having a good game, and it looks like they might sort of, he and Newhook and Laine might, start doing a little bit of something and showing what that second line is capable of. And of course, Laine ends up not making the bell or answering the bell for the second period. So Kirby Dach kind of spends the rest of the game bouncing around the lineup on all kinds of different lines, and he plays well. He played well anyway. He created some offense. We saw that play where he had, he's basically hammering at the puck 3 times in a row. He gets set up in front of the net all alone, and he's got a glorious scoring chance, and he just can't put the puck away. The guy is trying his ass off, guys. For all you people out there that are talking about him not trying or not putting in an effort or that he's not, give him a break. The kid is trying his hardest. He's trying so hard. He's snake bit. He's in his own head. He's mentally defeated, but he's trying his best. He's doing everything he possibly can to come back to his old form. There's nobody in the world that wants it to happen more than him. And, he's just, he just can't buy a break right now. And I thought he had a really nice game tonight. And I think that if we just leave him alone and let him play hockey and let him do his thing, that we will see that he was capable of returning to his old form. So let me know in the comments, guys, if you think those are good choices for the A team. Again, the A team is basically our version of the 3 stars, the 4 stars, I guess, in this case. Do you agree with those guys? Do you think that those guys had a good game? Are there players that you would have there that I haven't included? Or do you agree with me completely? Do you disagree with me completely? Do you think I'm a lunatic? Do you think I'm crazy for putting Christian Dvorak and Kirby Dach as the 2 of the 4 best players for the Canadiens tonight? What are your thoughts on that? I see that there's not a lot of action in the comments. There's not a lot of participants tonight. I guess that probably has something to do with it being 2 days before Christmas. But yeah, what do you think of that? Are you does that group stand out to you, or have I completely lost the plot? Am I a complete lunatic? What do you guys think? I'm gonna crack another beer here. That's what I'm gonna do, because it is the holidays. There we go. Let's see if this helps. Let's get sorry guys, just stay with me here for a second, will ya? We will just quickly, we'll do this. We'll do this. Over there. Okay. Chris Hansen, welcome. Chris Hansen, it was nice to see you. I think you were in Coach Frenchie's live the other day. It was great chatting with you over there. Doc was fine. Not sure what Dvorak did. Matheson was a train wreck as usual. Yeah, I guess I did. I looked at the numbers. I didn't find Matheson that bad, but when I looked at the numbers, I think he maybe was. Dvorak was just solid. I mean, Dvorak's numbers were great tonight. Let's have a look. What you want to know what Dvorak did tonight? He What's going on here now? On ice expected goal differential, he was second on the team behind Arbor Jackeye. He was with 0.6. So he was on the ice for 0.75 expected goals, for and only 0.16 against. His expected goals percentage was 82.9 tonight, right? So of all the expected goals tonight, he was on the ice 82.9% of goals for versus goals against. So of all the expected goals that were that occurred while he was on the ice, 82.9% of them were in favor of the Montreal Canadiens. That's 82.7. Pardon me. That's a pretty impressive number. What else can we look at? Again, that's second on. That was first on the team. I think expected goals percentage. Yeah, significantly. So by like 9%, he was the best on the team as far as that's concerned. So I thought he had a pretty solid game. He looked good out there. He was creating some offense. I thought that line looked really good. Let's go. We're getting some questions here. I love it. Let's do it. You don't mind it? What are you talking? You're talking about the A team, Zach? You're talking about the A team? Well, welcome, guys. Zach, Chris, Frank. I would put Lane Hudson also. Yeah, I don't know that, Lane Hudson played all right. I don't think it was one of his better games. I thought he, I don't think I wouldn't have put Lane Hudson as one of the. I didn't see him in there, but again, I wouldn't have argued with it. Dvorak was good on faceoffs, but since coming to Montreal, his offense is nowhere to be found. I agree with that. I think he's been a big disappointment offensively. I think his offensive production hasn't been anywhere near what they hoped it would be when he came over from, I believe it was the Coyotes that he came over from. Yeah, but again, sometimes you need to redefine yourself, right? We're seeing that from guys like Anderson and Gallagher redefining themselves and playing a different role and doing different things on the ice. I thought Dvorak looked good tonight. Jake Evans also played a good game. Yeah, I agree, Claude. Jake Evans has played again. Sometimes when you're doing things like 3 stars or an A team or the 4 best players, sometimes you find yourself, like if a guy is good every night, you tend not to think about him. Whereas a guy who maybe struggles a bit and then has a good night, sometimes he gets a little bit more consideration. So Jake Evans is kind of maybe falling in that category a little bit. Jake Evans could be, one of the top players in the lineup on any one of the last 5 or 6 games. So the team seems more confident, but you need to get that from every player every night, and I don't think we're seeing that. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think that as a team matures, as a team gets older, as a team gets more experience, as a team gets better, you'll see them, be more consistent. You'll see them be better from top to bottom in the lineup. Those are sort of, to me, those are the last things to develop in a young hockey team, right? When they all start playing good on a regular basis, like we talked about at the last couple games, right? The Canadiens now appear to be taking the game to the other team, right? Instead of showing up to the game and waiting to see what the other team is going to do and then responding to it, the Canadiens are now going and they're taking their game to the other team. And the more they can do that and the more consistently they can do that on a night in and night out basis, the better they'll be. And that's part of what Marty St. Louis is talking about when he says, he's, trying to teach them, how to win. These are winning habits, right? And showing up on a night in and night out basis and being at your best every single night, that's being a professional. That's being a professional hockey player, right? Like, again, these are, when they talk about how to become a professional or what it means to be a professional hockey player, these are the things they're talking about. A professional is somebody who shows up every night. I mean, obviously by definition, a professional is somebody who makes money, playing, well, I guess it doesn't have to be sports. It can be anything. But at the end of the day, to be a professional, if you want to be a good pro, it means that you take your job seriously and that you show up night in and night out and put in a full effort. And that's what they're working towards. Thank you, Zach. Have a good Christmas as well. I appreciate it. I hope everybody has a happy Christmas. It's coming up. We're Tibbs Eve now. Actually, the clock just rolled over here in Nova Scotia to 12:01, so we are officially Christmas Eve here in Nova Scotia. So yeah, it's getting closer and closer. Only gave up a first and a second for him. You're talking about, Chris, sorry, so Chris Hansen says only gave up a first and a second for him. I think you're talking about Christian Dvorak. Yeah, so it's it was a I guess a big return for Dvorak, so they expected a lot from him, but you can't cry over spilled milk sometimes. You got to take what you have and use what you have, and right now the third and fourth line are playing really, really well. Obviously some of those guys are being paid more money than you would typically want to be paying a third and fourth liner. But in a rebuild, that's maybe not as big a deal as it might be if you were, sort of fighting to win the cup. So, Dvorak, Anderson, Gallagher, Armia, guys that are not performing at the level that you maybe hoped that they would, but now they're contributing in other ways and they're helping the team, on and off the ice, right? You can't forget, what these guys are bringing to the younger players off the ice as well, teaching them how to be professionals, what we just talked about. And, being a professional is, like I said, it's about showing up and giving your best every single game, night in, night out. But there's also things off the ice, right? Even like simple things like, sleeping, getting your sleep properly, eating properly, all this stuff. Like these kids, some of these guys are, 20, 21, 22 years old, living on their own for the first time in their life. And, think about yourself when you went, I mean, those of you who went off to university and did all that stuff, like when you were a kid, when you were a teenager, you can't go home and eat craft dinner and play video games every night if you're going to be a professional hockey player. You got to eat right, you got to sleep right, you got to, take care of yourself, you got to do all that stuff. And, that may sound pretty basic, but that's a thing. And so these veteran guys, are hopefully, we know that they are. We hear them talk about it. They're role models. They teach these younger players how to do those things properly. A lot of these guys are redefining themselves. Dvorak, Anderson, Gallagher, they are making way too much money not to produce. Well, but again, what are you going to do about that, Jason? You can't do anything about that now. I agree with you. Their salaries are too high for what roles they're playing in the lineup. But you can't do anything about that right now. And again, it would be a much bigger deal if they were a contending team, a team that was hoping to win the Stanley Cup this year, and they were fighting to fit under the cap, and all of a sudden they're paying a guy like Gallagher $6.5 million to score 15 goals. But because they're rebuilding and the cap doesn't really have a lot of relevance to them, they can afford to have Gallagher on the third line, scoring 15, 16, 17 goals and playing that sort of two-way energy forward role, that you typically wouldn't want to pay $6.5 million for. And, in another couple of years, his contract will expire and, he'll likely move on. Or they'll sign him for a much lower amount, and he can play that role and make $3 million instead of $6.5 million. More likely he'll move on. But again, there's nothing you can do about that. Like what are you going to do? You can't trade him. You're not going to waive him. You're not going to just like dump him. So again, you've got to live with what you have, and that's part of a rebuild, is sort of rebuilding out of the previous contracts. It's, you're rebuilding your way out of, the mess that was left behind by the people that, were running the business before you got there. Well, Devin, Frank says, well, Devin, I wish you a Merry Christmas and your whole family happy holidays, buddy. A whole bunch of thumbs up. Good work. I appreciate it, Frank. I really thank you for coming by. It's great. I love that you come by every night. I know I do give you a hard time sometimes, but I do love the fact that you're here. I love that you engage, that you ask questions, that you're part of it. It's really, really awesome. I hope you also have a Merry Christmas, happy holidays, all that good stuff, and that everybody in your family is happy and healthy, and that you have a great holiday season and a wicked awesome new year. And I look forward to seeing you through the rest of the season as we continue to do more and more episodes of Habs After Dark. If you're over on TikTok, guys, we are not doing the TikTok live. We are over here on the YouTube channel, Recliner Sports 4. The instructions are on the screen behind me on the TikTok screen. All you have to do is go to your YouTube app, go to the Recliner Sports 4 channel, and click on the show, and come on in and join the party. We're having a good chat here. We're having good talk about the Montreal Canadiens. Canadiens lost tonight 5-4 to the Columbus Blue Jackets. If you want to talk about it, then come on over here to YouTube. We're not doing TikTok lives anymore, guys. We used to. That's the reason why I have the TikTok live turned on, is because there are a lot of people that I spent some really, really good times with, chatting about the Canadiens, chatting about hockey, and I want to give you and them an opportunity to know that we are live on YouTube and invite you to come on over and join us over here. But we're just not doing TikTok anymore, guys. It's just it's a platform that I don't really feel comfortable with anymore. But I do really want you guys to participate and to be part of it. So I do want you to see if you'll enjoy it over here on YouTube. So come on over and check it out. Frank Knox, welcome. We need more toughness. We seem to struggle there. I don't agree with that, Frank. I don't think the Canadiens need more toughness. I think they need to utilize their toughness a little bit more. I think they have plenty of toughness. Arbor Xhekaj being the most obvious example. Josh Anderson being another very good example of toughness. I think that Slavkovsky has some toughness in him, but I think he's one who probably needs to learn to use it a little bit more. Kirby Dach has some toughness in him, but he could also use it a little bit more. But again, guys like Slavkovsky and Dach need to be comfortable in their games before they start trying to do that stuff. I mean, we saw it with Xhekaj, right? Xhekaj needed to sort of turn down his toughness a little bit while he worked on other aspects of his game. Now the other aspects of his game are sort of, where he needs them to be and wants them to be. Now he can sort of, engage in the tough aspects of the game when the opportunity presents itself. Jaden Struble has toughness when he's in the lineup. Who else? Caden Gooley has a level of toughness. So again, I don't think there's a lack of toughness on the Montreal Canadiens. I think they could use to use it a little bit more. I thought that tonight they, I don't want to say they got bullied tonight. I don't think that's a case. I didn't really like the way that Columbus went after Laine early in the game and essentially put him out of the game. I would have liked to have seen somebody step up and take care of that a little bit more. I guess I agree with it in that sense. But I don't think it's a matter of the Canadiens not having toughness. I think it's just more a matter of them learning how and when to use it a little bit better. But that's a hard thing to do when you're young, right? A lot of these guys are in their early 20s, right? And so they're gaining their own confidence with, playing in the NHL, and that's not an easy aspect of the game to take on. Yes, Chris Hansen, Dvorak. Yes, they gave up a first and a second for him. Thoughts on Laine's comments before the game? I assume that's what you mean, is comments before the game. I didn't hate them, but they seemed a little unnecessary to me. I don't disagree with that, Aiden. I'm not sure I would have said that, but it's his personality, right? He's not a guy who really holds back. I didn't find that. I found that his comments, I don't think were meant to be as confrontational as they came off. I don't think he meant for them to be that confrontational. I think he's kind of trying to be a little bit funny to a certain degree. And it didn't really come off, I think, the way that he ideally would have wanted it to. But I agree with you. I didn't have a problem with them either, but I do. You're right. Like, why would you why would you stir up the hornet's nest when you didn't have to? That said, I also thought that the Columbus reporters and even the Canadiens reporters didn't really. Again, I guess it's not their job to protect Patrick Laine, but again, when you know a guy has come through what he's been through, you would expect and hope that they would show a little bit more restraint in sort of trying to drag him into that kind of thing. Does that make sense? Like, you would kind of hope that they would sort of, not try to pull him into that conversation or pull him into saying that kind of stuff. I don't know. Merci Claude, thank you for the Christmas tree. Did I see the Kucherov hit? I haven't seen it yet. I will have a look at it. I've heard it's pretty bad. Not a big Kucherov fan. I mean, obviously he's a great, fantastic hockey player, but he does do stupid things going all the way back to his junior hockey days. Yeah, I'll have a look at it later, but I haven't seen it. Yeah, exactly, Aiden. It put a bit of a target on his back, but again, I think like the thing with Laine is I think he has a pretty good relationship with most of the guys in that room. Like, there's a video of him when they played in Columbus. No, was it? They played a game in Columbus earlier in the year, and if you go on the Montreal Canadiens website, there's a video of him sort of showing up at the rink, and he's talking with the staff and talking with the people, and and some of the other players, and like he seems to be well liked and whatever. But you're right. I think he unnecessarily put a target on his back, and but again, I think he was kind of dragged into that a little bit by the reporters, which I didn't think was ideal. But anyways, the reporters are going to do what they're going to do. You can't really, nothing you can really do about it. What are my thoughts on the refs tonight? Yeah, we didn't really get into this yet, Frank. I think the refereeing in the NHL is pure trash. Tonight was a good example of it. Again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, and I don't want to be that guy that's always bitching and complaining about the referees. But refereeing in the NHL is just terrible. The referees have no idea what they're doing. They don't understand how to manage a hockey game. They don't know how to understand. They don't understand how to manage a professional sports event. The rules in the league. So it's not just about the referees. Like, the rules in the league are ridiculously stupid. They've put such a huge focus on these little ticky-tack, trying to trying to define hooking and slashing and tripping, right? Like now hooking is if the stick comes, horizontal across your opponent's body, it's hooking no matter what. No matter whether or not you actually impede the other guy, whether you slow him down or it doesn't matter. If your stick comes horizontally across your opponent's body, it's automatically hooking. Like we saw, we're seeing hooking now with where guys have one hand on their stick, right? We even saw the other day a play where a Canadiens player had one hand on his stick and he was reaching sort of this way, like reaching this way onto somebody, he wasn't doing this, he was doing this, like reaching sort of on a backhand movement, and that's hooking in the NHL now, right? We're seeing, if you tie up an opponent's stick in front of the net, that's being called as a penalty now. If you take your hand off your stick and you touch your opponent in any way on the boards, that's holding. But they're not calling it all the time, right? They're deciding when they want to call it and when they don't want to call it. Meanwhile, guys are getting, two-hand cross checks in the lower back in front of the net when they're not expecting it and being buried in front of the net, and that's not a penalty anymore, right? Like it's just, again, I say this all the time, and if you've been here before, you've heard me say it before. The goal of officiating in professional sports, in any sport, amateur, professional, or otherwise, is to do two things. It's to ensure the fairness and integrity of the game, and to protect the players, to protect the safety of the players. And the rules in the NHL don't do that anymore. Like when I talk about the fairness and the integrity of the game, what I mean is that the game is played in a consistent manner from one game to the next. And tonight, again, the first period, the referees just absolutely swallowed their whistles. There were a number of, even the RDS announcers who normally don't comment about that stuff at all were talking about how, in the first period, it looks like the referees have put their whistles away and they're going to let the guys play. They're not calling anything. You're going to really have to do something to get a penalty tonight. And they're going on and on and on about it. And then the second period rolls around and we see like that softy of soft penalties on Brendan Gallagher. Right? Like a really real, like he literally, like he slashed the guy from like, I don't know, like 2 inches away. It's not even a slash. Like it's just like, it's a tap on the gloves. Now I get that that's, something that we're now told will be called as a penalty. But where was all of that in the first 25, 30 minutes of the game? And then, of course, the referee gets his feelings hurt because Brendan Gallagher has the audacity, as a guy who's been in the NHL for 10 plus years, has the audacity to say something to him. And then Brandon Blandina, I'm going to think of another B word that I could throw in there, but he gets his feelings hurt because Brendan Gallagher, tells him he's bad at his job. And so he gets all bitchy and crybaby about it and gives him another 2-minute penalty for unsportsmanlike conduct. Like these refs are terrible. Like they're just not good at it. Like they don't know how to manage a hockey game. Like they allow the game to get out of control. And then when it gets out of control, they start penalizing the players because they can't do their jobs properly. So again, it's a rant. I understand that it's déclassé to sort of blame things on the ref. And I don't blame, again, I do think that the referees affected the result of the game tonight. But I talk about the referees in games where the Canadiens win. I talk about the referees in games where the Canadiens lose. It's not about that. The refereeing, the rules, the refereeing, the officiating, that entire aspect of the NHL is a complete and utter joke. It's a farce. The NHL will remain the fourth of the major sports as long as, they don't do anything to fix the way the games are officiated and refereed. Aiden asks my thoughts on Rempe's suspension. Matt Rempe has no business in the NHL, right? He can't play hockey. I'm happy to discuss that with anybody. If anybody disagrees with me, I'm happy to engage in it. I've had the conversation with people before. I've had the conversation with New York Rangers fans. I've had the conversation with people who like him. I've had conversations with people who dislike him. Matt Rempe has no business being in the NHL. He can't skate. He can't shoot. He can't hit. He can't fight, right? Everyone talks about him being, some sort of heavyweight in the NHL. He's lost more fights than he's won, right? 80% of fights in the NHL end up in a draw, right? Like most of the time, when people get in fights, even when it's a guy who's fighting a guy who's obviously tougher than him, they're usually able to kind of tie each other up enough where, at the end of it, you don't really, say that one guy won or the, Matt Rempe has like visibly and obviously lost the majority of his fights. Like I'm not talking about, he hasn't won them all or he's ended up, tying or drawing. He's lost the majority of his fights, right? He can't skate, right? He might be able to skate in a straight line, okay, but he can't change directions, which is why he gets in trouble all the time, because he's running around all over the ice trying to be a tough guy, trying to lay big hits. And what happens is he's going against guys who are better hockey players than him and who are better skaters than him. And so he's got it in his mind that he wants to hit that guy. I'm going to hit him as hard as I can. And guess what? That guy is a better skater than him. So that guy moves out of the way. And what happens is is that Matt Rempe ends up sticking an arm out or sticking an elbow out or sticking whatever out, a leg out or whatever. And he ends up throwing a dirty hit. And it's because he can't skate and he doesn't know how to body check. And he's running around with this, one thought in his brain that I've got to go out and hit somebody. I've got to go out and, make a big hit. And, you can't do that. In the NHL, you can't run around looking for hits, especially, if you can't skate. Right? If you want to throw hits in the NHL, you have to kind of wait for them to come to you. If you're, maybe if you're the best skater, the fastest, and you've got, really good agility on your skates, maybe you can be, but if you're running around looking for hits in the NHL, you're going to end up hitting guys badly. Like even Jacob Trouba, who I can't stand, he doesn't usually run around looking for hits. He doesn't chase guys for hits. He hits guys because he knows that if he plays his position and he plays his game, that eventually a hit will come to him and he'll be able to take advantage of it if he wants to. But Matt Rempe is, not smart enough and not good enough hockey player to understand that. He goes on the ice trying to make waves every time he's on the ice, and he goes around chasing people. And because he can't skate and because he can't change direction and because he can't stop, he ends up hitting people badly because they move out of the way to avoid him. And instead of, accepting the fact that he's going to miss his hit or, changing his direction, to finish the hit, he continues on his straight line and ends up sticking out an arm or an elbow or something and ends up hitting people. Like, again, you saw, he skates off the ice, gesturing to the crowd after that hit against Heiskanen, I think it was that he hit, wasn't it, the other night? He's out, he's skating off the ice, gesturing to the crowd. Like, you just threw, anybody who watched that hit is saying to themselves, this guy can't play hockey. Like, he doesn't belong. Like, he literally doesn't belong in the East Coast League. He's that bad. He's terrible. He's an absolute disaster. Like, he's a sideshow. And the fact that the Rangers are using him that way, if you look at the timeline of where the Rangers started to fall apart, it's when they started to do this whole Matt Rempe thing where they started to, Rempire state of mind and all this bullshit. Like, it's a joke. He's a joke. It's a joke. The Rangers are a joke for, and they're going to get him killed because some guy's going to beat the lips off him one night, right? He's going to, he's already been beaten up multiple times, and eventually he's going to get beat up by the wrong guy, and he's going to take a big punch from the wrong person, and it's going to really, really, really scramble his brains. Anyways, that's my Matt Rempe rant. Crosby tying Lemieux for career assists. I didn't see that, but that's an impressive feat. Anytime you do anything that Mario Lemieux did, it's impressive. And so, Sidney Crosby's an impressive guy. Jason Teal, if McKinnon hits 1,000 points by the end of the year, needs just 44 points, which he should easily do, barring injury, he would become just the 16th player in history to reach 1,000 points before the age of 30. Yeah, which is actually really impressive when you consider the fact that, McKinnon's first 2 or 3 years in the NHL weren't overly impressive as far as, pure numbers or production numbers are concerned, right? But it is big-time company. Nathan McKinnon's a fantastic hockey player. I don't think there's anybody in the NHL that works any harder than he does. He really takes his game really seriously, which is actually kind of impressive because those who have followed him his entire career will know that, while he always loved the game and while he was always committed to the game, how do I put this in a nice way? Nathan McKinnon isn't sort of the sharpest knife in the drawer, but he's really worked hard and he's really figured out a lot of stuff. Like, Nathan McKinnon was a kind of guy who had pure natural raw talent when he was in junior hockey. And, he worked really hard in the sense that, he practiced a lot and was the first guy in the gym and first guy on the ice and all that kind of stuff. He's a rink rat, that kind of thing. But as far as sort of being, He had hockey sense. He's obviously has a hockey IQ and he's smart on the ice, but he was no genius off the ice. And like, it's funny if you watch him now, not just when you read about the stuff that he's doing to make himself better, but even just listening to interviews now. Like, go watch an interview from Nathan MacKinnon when he was in his first year or two in the NHL, or even when he was in junior hockey, and then listen to him when he's interviewed now. The guy has matured a ton. I think I'm impressed. I like the guy. I've always liked him as a player, but I'm impressed with what he's done for himself and how he's built his career. Owen asks me, do you think Rempe deserved 8 games for that hit on Miro Heiskanen? It was definitely dirty, but everyone has a different opinion. Anybody who doesn't think that was a dirty hit knows absolutely nothing about hockey, Owen. He's just another enforcer that we need. Maybe look at Ryan Reeves with Toronto. He throws his body around night in and night out. Well, the difference between Ryan Reeves and Matt Rempe is, first of all, Ryan Reeves is tough and a good fighter. Matt Rempe's not. Matt Rempe's not even a good fighter. The other difference is that, at one time, perhaps not so much anymore, Ryan Reeves was actually an okay hockey player. Like, Ryan Reeves is a good skater. He's, a significantly better skater than Matt Rempe. He has, physical skills on the ice, and he understands the game as well. Matt Rempe has been kicked out of, what did they say, 4 times out of 22 games he's played in. He's played 22 games in his entire career, and he's been kicked out of 4 of them. That's one of the most absurd stats I've ever heard in my life. So to say that he's an enforcer or just another enforcer is ridiculous. One, because he can't fight to save his life, right? Like I said earlier, he's lost more fights than he's won. Most fights in the NHL end up in a draw, right? Even if you've got one guy who's pretty tough against a guy who's not nearly as tough, they normally find a way to tie each other up. And it's rare that a guy, wins a decisive victory over another guy in a fight. Ryan Reeves has multiple decisive losses as a fighter in the NHL. Like, that's just absurd. So to call him an enforcer, I think is completely inaccurate. He's just not a good hockey player. He can't skate, can't shoot, can't hit, can't fight, can't do any of these things. The idea that he is being put forward as an enforcer or as, anything, the New York Rangers are just doing, they're doing the kid a disservice. I guess he's getting a paycheck out of it, which I guess is, beneficial to him. But beyond that, they're going to get him killed. Like, he's going to get beat up by the wrong guy one day, and it's really going to scramble his brains. Like I said, it's bad. He's not an enforcer. He's not a good hockey player. He doesn't know how to throw a body check. He can't skate. He can't change directions. He can't stop, which is why he continues to throw these hits, because he's chasing down guys, trying to hit guys, and they're moving out of the way, as they should. They're being, elusive, as hockey players are meant to be. And because he can't change directions and he can't skate, when his opponent is being elusive, he can't keep up. So what does he do? He sticks out a leg, or he sticks out an arm, or he sticks out something, and he ends up, doing something that gets him kicked out of the game. Like, it's just there to compare Matt Rempe to Ryan Reeves, and I am by no means any Ryan Reeves fan. He's never played on any team that I've particularly liked. And he, to compare those two is, like, Ryan Reeves is, I was going to say Ryan Reeves is like, Mario Lemieux compared to Matt Rempe. That's probably, a bit of an exaggeration, but there's no comparison between those two guys. There's just no comparison. Anonymous says Rempe isn't a skilled hockey player. If he doesn't play dirty, he won't play at all. That's his only skill. And again, I don't even know how dirty he is, right? I just think that, he ends up doing dirty things because he just doesn't have the skills to do things properly. It's like he doesn't know how to hit. So it's like he's never been taught to hit. And he also, because he can't skate, when he goes to hit somebody, he ends up hitting them badly because, no guy is going to stand there and let you hit him. So, you've got to have some level of agility and mobility on your skates in order to properly hit somebody in the NHL. And if a guy moves out of the way, you've either got to accept that, oh, I can't hit that guy because he's moved out of the way, or you've got to have the agility and mobility to stick with him. And if you don't, you end up doing the bullshit that we're seeing from Matt Rempe now, for his 4th time. So yes, for whoever it was that asked, about does he deserve an 8-game suspension? He absolutely does, and he probably deserves even more. Especially, now that he's a repeat offender. Jason Teal, McKinnon took his dieting and mental ability to another level. Yeah, I mean he did. I mean, it's more than that. I mean, he's doing all kinds of crazy stuff. I know I have some insight into Nathan McKinnon. One, because he played for the Halifax Mooseheads, which is where I live, and I had season tickets for about 12 years, and including during Nathan McKinnon's time with the Mooseheads. My neighbor also is his second cousin, so we talk quite a bit about what's going on in Colorado and some of the ins and outs of what's going on over there. He's just a kid that I would venture to say, obviously I think that every player that's in the NHL is committed and dedicated and wants to win, but I would say there aren't very many players in the NHL who are as committed to winning as Nathan McKinnon is. I think as far as that's concerned, there are very few guys that are in the same boat as Nathan McKinnon. Rempe is just big. Yeah, he's big, that's for sure. But again, there's lots of guys who are big. And in today's NHL especially, you can't, there have been guys in the past probably who are, similar to Rempe in that they're just big goons. But, back in the day, you could kind of do that. Like back in the 80s and the 70s, you could kind of do that because the guys weren't as fast. You could catch guys, you could do stuff like that. But anyways, George Chem Games, Laine has no even strength goals, so do we package him up for Shea Weber and give him daily injections of adrenaline causing epinephrine and activate him off LTIR? I think that's a joke, so I probably won't answer it. I guess the only part that really might be serious in that is the fact that Laine has no even strength goals. I don't think it's a major concern. I still think that he's, coming back around. Unfortunately, tonight with him getting injured, we'll see what that looks like. I have no concern about Laine and what he's up to. Let's take this chance, guys. We're getting quite late here, and we haven't really gotten to the report card yet. So tonight's report card, again, this report card is kind of the way I assess the Canadiens. Games, it's not just about wins and losses when you're in a rebuild. Sometimes you've got to look a little bit deeper to determine whether or not a team has had a good game or not. So this is our report card. Unfortunately, our streak of consecutive games with all check marks, all passing grades is gone. Tonight they allowed the 5 goals against, so they didn't manage to allow 3 or fewer goals, which is a sort of a standard, a landmark, whatever you want to call it. They did manage to score 3 or more goals. Again, that standard is, if you score more than 240 goals and you allow fewer than 240 goals, chances of you making the playoffs are pretty good if you do one of those things, and almost certainly you'll make the playoffs if you do both of them. Special teams tonight, I gave them a check mark. Probably could have given them a failing grade there. No goals on the power play, and they did allow a power play goal against tonight, which is certainly not as good as they've been recently. I thought they did, play with, a certain level of energy. They were engaged in the game tonight. The first period obviously wasn't ideal. Progress, I think this game was a step in the right direction. Obviously it's disappointing. It was heartbreaking, a bit of a heartbreaking loss. We talked about it earlier. But again, I don't think this is an indication that they've sort of regressed or that we're back to where, or that they're back to where they were, prior to the last, I think the last 4 or 5 games they've looked pretty decent. And I think they're still in that in that realm. Pride, I thought they played with pride tonight. Again, maybe a little bit more of that physical side of stuff that we talked about a minute ago, about whether or not, they, could have stood up for each other a little bit more. I would have liked to seen somebody, step up and, put a halt to, the targeting that Columbus seemed to be insistent on with Patrick Laine. I would have liked to have seen, a Josh Anderson or a Arbor Jackeye or somebody like that go in and sort out, these guys who were just, continually hitting Laine. Even if they were clean hits, sometimes you got to send a message that, leave that guy alone. Discipline, again, I have a hard time with discipline just because the refereeing is so inconsistent. Could you argue that, Brendan Gallagher showed a lack of discipline by getting a penalty for mouthing off to the ref after he got called on a really weak slashing penalty? Could you say that Cole Caulfield's hooking penalty was indisciplined? Yeah, I guess you could. But again, the referee let everything go for a period and a half before, or the referees let everything go for a period and a half before they decided to start calling things. I can understand Brendan Gallagher's frustration. And, as far as the hooking call on Caulfield is concerned, it's, again, I get that it's a hook. I get that they've told us it's a hook, but that same play happened a dozen times in tonight's game and it was only called once. So again, I really struggle to blame the players for that when the message they're getting from the referees and from the league is so inconsistent that they, half the time they just don't know what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do. It's really, really, really tough. And I don't think they played 60 minutes. I'm going to give them a failing grade for that because they didn't show up to start the game. I thought they struggled in the first period. They kind of sleptwalked through it a little bit. But again, the fact that they came around, I think, is a positive. But they will get a failing grade for the 60 minutes aspect of the report card. So there's your report card, gang. If you agree with the report card, is there anything on there that you think that I got wrong? Are there any grades that you would have judged differently? Let me know in the comments. We'll be on probably for another 10 or 15 minutes, and then we'll shut things down. If you're over on TikTok, guys, follow the instructions on the screen behind me. Open up your YouTube app. Go to Recliner Sports 4. That's the channel. I guess, yeah, there we go. I can get out of the way. The channel is Recliner Sports 4. The show is called Habs After Dark. Just click on the video. Come on in. We're live right now. We'll be live for another 15 minutes or so. Like I said, you can come in. You can watch the show. You can see the graphics. Unfortunately, we're not answering any questions on TikTok tonight. We don't do the TikTok lives. The purpose of opening the TikTok live was simply to let you know that we are on YouTube, we are live, and that we are doing a show, and to invite you to come on over. We really would love to have you, and we welcome you. If you are here in the live, guys, thank you for coming. If you haven't subscribed, the subscribe button is right here below. Just hit that button, hit the notification bell. We are trying to grow our subscribers. I think we're around 170-ish now. We want to try and get to 500 subscribers. YouTube allows us to do some really cool things once we get to 500 subscribers. So it would be great if you would help us to get there. Hit the notification bell, hit the thumbs up. The thumbs up helps. We've got 12 thumbs up so far tonight. And the same thing applies if you're watching in a replay, guys. If you're not able to make it live and you're watching in a replay, again, we would love for you to be part of the group, part of the gang, part of the crew. We'd love for you to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and hit the thumbs up. Again, TikTok. I'm always still caught up on TikTok because I did TikTok for about a year before switching over to YouTube. But YouTube tells me that about between 35 and 40% of the people who watch our show are actually subscribed. I think we can do better than that, guys. It really does help. I do appreciate it. If you enjoy the content, it really helps me out. It helps the channel out if you do hit that subscribe button. So again, that's the end of my begging for tonight. Let's get back to the comments. Owen says, do you think by the end of the season, Ovechkin will break Gretzky's goal record? Is he back playing now, Ovechkin? Or is he still hurt? I would have said if he hadn't gotten hurt, I would have said he probably was. I mean, at the beginning of the season, I would have said no, he's not going to break Gretzky's record this year. After the first 25 games of the year, I would have said yes, absolutely, with the pace that he was on, that he would. But now that he's injured, and again, I'm not sure if is he back playing? If he's not, he should be soon. But yeah, I think with the injury, I think it's going to be hard for him to break that record this year, Owen. Frank Knox, should Habs try to get Nikolai Ehlers, good friend of Line, an old teammate, to have real second line and maybe push Doc to get back on track? Thoughts? I like Nikolai Ehlers, again, another former Halifax Moosehead who I did have the good fortune of watching while he was in junior hockey. I think he's a good hockey player. I think that you're right. He and Line are friends. I don't know whether I would add him to the lineup. Again, it has nothing to do with him as a player or his abilities. I just don't know whether he fits in the plan of a rebuild. Age-wise, I think what is he now? He would be... Ehlers would be... Oh, geez, I didn't want to do that. What did I just do? I screwed things up. Ehlers is 26 or 27. I want to say Ehlers DB. So Nikolai Ehlers is 28. So yeah, I don't know that he fits in the time frame that the Canadiens are looking for. Yeah, I don't know that I'm adding Nikolai Ehlers to this team. Again, I'm a fan of Nikolai Ehlers. I think he's a fantastic hockey player. Frankly, I think he's underachieved so far in his career, and I don't say that as a negative. It's to say that I think that he has a lot more in the tank. What is he? 64 points is his highest. He's been right around 60 points like 4 or 5 times in his career. I think he's capable of a lot more, and I say that as a compliment, not as a negative. But I don't know that I would. I don't know that I would add him. I don't know that I would add him to the mix. Buffalo almost tied their own 14 streak loss record. Yes, Buffalo's been struggling. Buffalo's tough. They've had it tough. Yeah, I mean the Canadiens need to take advantage of the fact that they're struggling right now. Adrian, I can't really comment this game because I couldn't watch and didn't listen to it. That's okay, Adrian. I missed the first 10 minutes myself. Overall, I think it was a game where the Canadiens came out a little bit slow. They struggled in the first period, but they were able to. I'll give you a bit of a summary. They were able to turn things around in the second period. They were down 2-0 after the first. They were tied 3-3 going into the third. They had a decent second period. I thought they also played quite well in the third. However, they were outscored 2-1 in the third period and ended up losing 5-4. It's just one of those games where I thought they played well enough to win. They probably deserved a better result. They just didn't get it. I thought the referees didn't help them at all, but it is what it is. Demidov will be in Montreal next year. Most likely don't need Ehlers. Yeah, I think that's probably part of it. I don't know that I'm going to agree with you that it's a certainty that Demidov will be in Montreal next year. I think it's certainly possible, and even we could even say it's likely. But again, I don't think that that's an egg that I think you got to wait for that egg to hatch before you're making any guarantees. Demidov is playing in a league that is widely viewed as being slightly below American Hockey League level. So anybody who thinks that he'll just walk into the NHL lineup as a 19-year-old, maybe setting expectations that aren't fair and or reasonable. I'm not saying that he's not going to be. I'm not saying that he's not good enough. I'm just saying that I don't know that I would be talking in absolutes about, what Demidov is going to be doing next year. We don't know, right? Again, is it possible? Absolutely. Does he good? Is he going to be on the Lane Hudson track where he walks into the NHL and sort of makes the adjustment quite comfortably, and obviously Lane Hudson hasn't been perfect, but he certainly hasn't shown that much difficulty becoming an NHLer. Could he is he going to be that guy, or is he going to be more like a Logan Mailloux who maybe struggles a little bit. I don't know. Again, I suspect he's going to be more along the lines of Lane Hudson, but again, I don't think it makes a lot of sense to be talking in absolutes about, when prospects are going to be at the NHL level, because we really don't know. These prospects don't always make it. I don't know who you're talking about there, Adrian, when you say not next year. Jason, not to hype him up too much, but with him and a few additions could really give the team a jolt next season. Yeah, but again, I mean, if you're like, what are your expectations for Demidov? Like, I mean, if you're telling me that he's going to be on the NHL team next year for sure, that you've already got him penciled in, I'm going to tell you that that's not a guarantee. And if he does make the NHL next year, like what you think he's going to be? A 40-point guy, a 50-point guy, a 60, like these are all expectations I don't think are reasonable. Do we hope he does that? Yeah, we do. We hope he gets, we hope he's a 50, 60, 70-point guy. But to expect it and to say that, it's going to happen, again, this is kind of, what hockey fans do, Canadiens fans do, is they set these expectations, and then when they don't happen, we talk about them being disappointments, right? Like Uri Slafkovsky, on pace for 50-ish points this year, and everyone's talking about him being a disappointment. He's 20 years old, right? Like he's 20 years old, and, if you've got two 50-point seasons in the NHL before you're 20 years old, you're a pretty good hockey player. But because, everybody has these expectations that he's going to do this, that, and the other thing, now all of a sudden we're talking about, Uri Slafkovsky as being, some people are, not me, but some people are talking about him being a bit of a disappointment. So I think we should temper our expectations about, some of these players, whether it's Demidov, whether it's Michael Hage, whether it's Jacob Fowler, who knows, we just, tone it down a bit, because, we don't know what these guys are going to be. And if, you have reasonable expectations, when they meet those expectations or exceed them, then you're happy. Owen Gale, Lindy Ruff definitely has not helped Buffalo out at all. They need to figure their stuff out. Yeah, I didn't think Lindy Ruff was the right man for that job, to be honest with you. I don't know that Lindy Ruff is the guy I would hire to coach a young hockey team. I get that he's a bit of a legend in Buffalo as a player and as a coach, but he's just not. I just don't know that he was the right man for that job. He doesn't strike me as a developmental type coach. He doesn't strike me as a guy that you bring in to motivate younger players and you sort of develop younger players. It doesn't strike me as the guy that you would immediately think of for that job. Similar to Tortorella. I don't get why they would bring Tortorella in to coach a young team. Same reason Sean Cronin in Anaheim seems to be a bit of a disaster down there, as far as bringing in sort of a hard ass to coach a bunch of young kids. I don't get it. I don't think that makes sense. I get why a guy like Pat Verbeek would hire a coach like that, because Pat Verbeek himself was a bit of a hard ass. But again, a hard ass approach to coaching doesn't seem to be it doesn't seem to work in 2024, almost 2025. And again, not to say that Lindy Ruff is necessarily a hard ass, but he is, kind of old school. And I don't know that he sort of inspires young players, and that his, strength is in the developmental side of the game necessarily. Malakas says, Demidov equals the next Alex McGillney. Okay, well, again, that would be really, really nice. But again, I think we should probably temper our expectations a little bit and not get too far out ahead of our skis and just, chill out on that kind of stuff, right? Yeah, it'd be awesome if he turns out to be the next Alex McGillney, but he might not. And if he doesn't, it's not the end of the world, right? If he turns out to be something less than that, it's not the end of the world. If he turns out not to make it at all, it's not the end of the world. Right? And that's the problem, is Canadiens fans will treat it like it's the end of the world if he doesn't make it. Right? They'll talk about how the Canadiens screwed up and they drafted the wrong guy and they made a mistake and they should have known better and they did this, that, and the other. Well, not every first-round draft pick becomes a superstar in the NHL. It just doesn't happen. Will it happen with Demidov? I don't know. Probably. He's met expectations at every level so far. But again, to call a guy the next Alex Mogilny, I know you've got a smiley face next to it, and you're probably, being a little bit facetious or sarcastic about it, but like, the problem is that when, a lot of Canadiens fans do think he'll be the next Alex Mogilny, and if and when he doesn't become the next Alex Mogilny, they're going to treat it and view it as some sort of major failure and a problem and something that they, complain about on social media and sort of, blame the management team for, all of that. Jason says, I never said absolute. He looks good in minimal ice time, no power play. Well, no, but you said Demidov will be in Montreal next year. You did say most likely. Okay, so there you go. Okay, I'll give you that. You think he will make? Well, again, you're saying two things there, Malakas. You're saying you think he will make it, and you're saying he will make it for sure. Well, which is it? Right? You think he'll make it. Okay, I think he'll make it too. I hope he'll make it, but I'm not sure he'll make it. And you can't be sure he'll make it either. And you can't be sure that he'll get 40 or 50 points. So, yeah, maybe he is better than Michkov. I mean, I think he's a better prospect than Michkov. But Michkov has proven it, right? Michkov's in the NHL. Michkov has accomplished the goal. Michkov has proven that he can play in the league, right? And with any prospect, you draft them with the expectation and the hope and, the educated guess that they're going to be good in the NHL. And, as they progress through the different levels of hockey and they succeed at each of those different levels, they get closer to being what you project or prospect them to be. But until they actually do it in the NHL, you've got no idea. They know Michkov. Michkov, we know now he can play in the NHL, right? He's a point per game guy in the NHL right now as a rookie. He's there. He's done it. He's achieved the goal. He's proven them right. Until Demidov does that, we don't know, right? We can say that, from a prospect point of view, that, Demidov does certain things better than Michkov does. But until he does those things in the NHL, he won't be better than Michkov, right? Until he, to me, as a prospect, Demidov is a better all-around hockey player. I think Michkov is a pure scorer, and I don't know that Demidov will compete with him in that aspect of the game. But overall, offensively, his ability to create offense, his ability to, to make his teammates around him better, and his defensive game, his all-around hockey, his 200-foot game, his, two-way play, I think, what we've seen from him developmentally, as he's come up through, his career, he has shown that he's better at those things. But until he does those things at the NHL level, I don't think we can say that he's better than Michkov, right? Like, he projects to be better than Michkov in some of our minds, but again, we don't know. We have no idea, right? Everyone thought Alexandre Daigle was going to be a superstar. Everybody thought, Nail Yakupov was going to be the next great Russian hockey player. He wasn't, right? He didn't turn out to be that. So, again, I hope he does. You hope he does. I think he will. You think he will. But to say that we know he will or that we're sure he will is pushing it. Adrian Demidov, he might be in the AHL next season, and in the hockey season of there, he might get the call. Uh, yeah, I mean, it's all speculation. Like we're not professionals. Like, we watch hockey on TV. Right? I mean, some of us watch more than others. Some of us read more than others. Some of us do more research than others. Some of us look into things more than others. Some of us talk to other people and get opinions from people and whatever. But at the end of the day, even the best scouts in the NHL don't get it right all the time. So Jason Teal, no one knows what anyone could become. That's why you are rebuilding and draft high. You expect to hit on these players. He was drafted 5th overall. Gorton and Hughes, no doubt, have big expectations. Yeah, again, you're allowed to have big expectations, but again, it's like it's not really expectations as it is kind of like hopes. And when you're in a rebuild, you're gathering assets, right? You've heard Kent Hughes talk about that. Like the first stage of the rebuild is tearing down your team and then gathering assets. Like you're getting as many draft picks as you can get, and you're drafting as many young prospects as you can. And obviously, if you're rebuilding, it's in your best interest to go out and hire the best scouts. It's in your best interest to hire the best developmental guys. It's in your best interest to hire the best coaches, right? So you go out and you draft as many players as you can, and you gather as many assets as you can. And the idea is that a portion or a percentage of those assets, of those draft picks, will eventually become good NHLers. Not all of them, right? They're not all going to make it. They're not all going to succeed, but you're trying to stack the odds in your favor by drafting as many of them as you can, and developing them as best as you can, right? So you're getting a good scouting staff to make sure that the guys that you do draft have the best opportunity to be successful, because you're picking hopefully the right guys. And then you're hiring the right developmental people and coaches, because the better you coach them and the better you develop them, the more likely they are to succeed. But at the end of the day, if you've got 10 prospects, only a percentage of them are going to make it to the NHL and are going to succeed. A percentage of them are not. The better you do your job, the better you scout, the better you develop, the better you, do all those things, the higher that percentage will be. But, if only 5 of the 10 make it, then you're doing okay. If 6 or 7 of them make it, then you've done fantastic. But there are still some of them that won't make it. No matter how good you are at your job, you're not going to, every guy you draft, especially, every guy you draft in the first round isn't going to be a star. Some of them just aren't going to make it. You won't find a scout that thought that, Alexandre Daigle was going to be such a non-impactful NHL hockey player, or Nail Yakupov was going to be playing in the KHL. Like, nobody expected that. Well, yeah, it's predictions. We can predict, and that's fine, but yeah, in a rebuild, if you don't hit on the high picks, it's not even a matter of hitting, right? It's not even just about, like, it's about doing your best job of scouting and developing the players that you draft, and committing fully to building your team with young players, right? So you're not out there signing older guys. You're getting rid of older guys, and you're trading or getting rid of those older guys in return for young prospects and draft picks. And then you're hiring the right people to give those young players the best opportunity to succeed. And that, to me, is why some of the so-called rebuilds that we see in the NHL have failed. right? Some Toronto fans will tell you that they went through a rebuild. Well, no, they didn't. Right? Like, at what point did Toronto focus on amassing as many draft picks and young prospects as they possibly could and moving away from older veteran players? Toronto never did that. They drafted some really good players. They were fortunate enough to be, in a position to draft Austin Matthews. They drafted Mitch Marner, but, it wasn't by virtue of the fact that they went out and just got to me, a proper rebuild means that you're amassing quantity of draft picks and quantity of prospects, and then you're doing your best to develop them. You're not sort of sitting over in the corner tanking in hopes that, the number one draft pick is going to be a generational player, because there's not a generational player available in every draft. Yeah, you're right. You get lucky and you some lower picks, and the higher likelihood, the lower you are in the standings, the higher likely you hit that pick. But, some years, there isn't an Austin Matthews or a Connor Bedard or a Connor McDavid or a Nathan McKinnon in every draft. Some years there isn't that guy. And maybe the guy who turns out to be that guy is a guy who people don't even realize until afterwards. Hunter says, thoughts on the Rempe hit? I have no clue why he's even in the NHL to begin with. You've heard me talk about Rempe before, Hunter, so I won't go through it again, just because we already had we already went into it at length about 10 minutes ago. You're right. I agree with you completely. He has no business in the NHL. He's not a good hockey player. He can't skate, can't hit, can't fight, can't shoot. He doesn't do anything even at an AHL level, to be quite honest, let alone the NHL level, and he has no business being in the league. So the hit's terrible. The hit's bad because he can't skate. When he goes to hit a player and that player, makes a move to evade him, he doesn't have the ability to, either abort the hit or to stick with the player so that he can, continue with the hit, and he ends up throwing an arm out or whatever, and he ends up making a dirty play. And now he's been kicked out of 4 of 22 games that he's played in. He's a disaster. I don't know if you would call it a rebuild, but they got Matthews, Marner, and Nylander with high picks. Not that this amounted to much thus far. Well, here's why I don't call it a rebuild, Jason, is because, yes, they did get those guys, but they didn't get it sort of by virtue of anything other than, really luck, if we're going to be honest about it. They didn't sort of make a commitment to the draft. They didn't make a commitment to young players and prospects. They were signing, 35-year-old veterans right off the bat. Day one, Brendan Shanahan, it wasn't a case where they, committed to youth. They never did. And certainly when they got, Matthews, Marner, and Nylander, they thought they had the world by the tail, and they started to do all kinds of crazy shit. And, they never completed, even the half-assed rebuild that they started, which is why they, have been a mediocre team for so long, right? They're good enough to make the playoffs, but beyond that, they don't really accomplish that much. But again, I hesitate to even call what Toronto did a rebuild. Like Chicago this year, right? Like what was Chicago doing this year, signing, what did they sign? 3 guys over the age of 35 this summer. Like, it makes no sense. Did Laine get hurt again? Guy can't catch a break. Yeah, he did. I don't know the details. I don't want to talk about it too much because I don't know the details. But yeah, we'll see. It doesn't appear to be that serious. But again, I don't want to say anything because there's been no statement and there's been no confirmation of that. So If you're rebuilding, you're going to be drafting high for probably 5 years. There might be a generational player in one draft, but in 5 years, you would hope to get a really good player, franchise type. Yeah, but I mean, what if the franchise player? What if there's a generational player in the draft and you're picking number 3? Right? Like what if there's a generational player in the draft, but nobody knows it because he goes 10th in the draft or 6th or 7th, right? Like it's I get it. There are years where there's Connor McDavid and there's Connor Bedard and there's whatever, but at the end of the day, if you're rebuilding, the best thing you can do for yourself is to amass as many draft picks as possible and get as many young high draft picks in your system as you possibly can, because the more you have, the more are going to succeed, right? The more you have, the more likely you're going to have guys that are going to be contributors to your team when they're successful down the road. And what we're seeing is that there are teams that have that superstar or those superstars, but they can't, that doesn't put you over the top, right? Has Connor McDavid won a Stanley Cup? Has Austin Matthews won a Stanley Cup? Obviously Connor Bedard's, pretty early on in his, has Jack Hughes won a Stanley Cup? Like, it's not about getting a superstar, right? It's not about finding those superstars. It's about building a team. It's about building an entire team, right? So for again, if we want to turn it back to the Canadiens, it's not just about drafting Demidov and Reinbacher and Slavkovsky. It's also about drafting like Owen Beck and Luke Tuck and guys like that, and Lane Hudson, who was a 3rd round draft pick, I want to say. Yeah, I don't think that's right, Jason. I don't think they needed to get to the cap floor, and if they wanted to get to the cap floor, there's other ways they could have done it. I don't believe their cap situation was that dire. Honestly, I think they're. Let's see. It was not a cap floor situation, I don't believe, for Chicago, but I will check just to be sure. Yeah, so they've only got, well, I guess they're $7 million under the cap right now. The cap floor is $65 million, I think. So they're $20 million above the cap floor. So I don't know that, you can say that they went out and got Alec Martinez so that they could reach the cap floor. I don't think you could say they went out and got Pat Maroon at, $1.3 million so they could get to the cap floor. I don't think they went out and got Craig Smith for $1 million so that they could get to the cap floor. I don't think they went out and got, well, Alec Martinez is making $4 million, I guess, unbelievably. But I get the acquiring as many prospects, just saying the successful rebuilding, get that superstar and multiple. But again, who's a successful rebuild? Pretty much every winning team has one. Like who? Like who are we talking about? Like again, like who is the generational superstar on the Florida Panthers? Like I get that they have really good players. Like, they have Matthew Tkachuk and they have Barkov and they have whatever, but who's the generational player on that team? Right? Like who's the generational player on the Las Vegas Golden Knights? I mean, are we putting Jack Eichel in that category? I mean, don't get me wrong, Jack Eichel's an incredible hockey player, but are we putting him in the Connor McDavid, Connor Bedard, Nathan McKinnon, Austin Matthews category? So I mean, if you're putting Eichel in that category, then Like where? I mean, where do you draw the line at those players? Like, okay, but okay, so what is it? What team in the NHL doesn't have? Like, what playoff team in the NHL doesn't have a guy that you would define as a superstar? Then, like, if the Canadiens were to win the Stanley Cup with their current roster, and Nick Suzuki has 85 or 90 points, how is he any different than Jack Eichel or Matthew Tkachuk? Like, if the Montreal Canadiens win the Stanley Cup with their current roster and Slavkovsky has, you know, 80 some points and is a, you know, elite power forward in the league, like, how is he different than, you know, Jack Eichel? How is he different than, like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't get what you mean by that. Like, every team has, what do you mean every team that's successful has a superstar? Like, well, I don't understand what you mean by that. So what, like, define what makes you a superstar? I mean, to me, I think what you're saying is that when a guy wins the Stanley Cup, I don't think we'd be talking about Jack Eichel in the same terms if he hadn't won that Stanley Cup. So it's kind of a chicken and the egg situation, right? Is Eichel a superstar because he won the Stanley Cup, or did Eichel win the Stanley Cup because he's a superstar? And if Nick Suzuki had been, let's look at this for a second here. So the year Jack Eichel won the Stanley Cup in Las Vegas, he had 66 points in 67 games. And again, I know that points aren't everything. Get me wrong. I mean, I understand that, points aren't everything, but certainly Nick Suzuki is a superior defensive hockey player to Jack Eichel, but, production-wise, Nick Suzuki's not that far off Jack Eichel. So if last year Suzuki had 77 points in 81 games, something like that. So if Nick Suzuki is on a Stanley Cup winning team and he has 77 points in 81 games, are you calling him a superstar? I don't, like, again, I think that what you're doing is you're equating superstar with the fact that guys have won the Stanley Cup. Right? Like, if Matthew Tkachuk were still in Calgary and they were still, a struggling team that, was in and out of the playoffs from year to year, would you be calling him a superstar? I don't know. I think that the Canadiens have guys on their team who, if and when the team becomes successful and becomes a playoff contender and gets to the point where they're, in the running for a Stanley Cup, they have guys who will be on the same level of Matthew Tkachuk, Alexander Barkov, Jack Eichel. Like, do they have, do they have a Nathan McKinnon or a Connor McDavid or an Austin Matthews? No, I don't think they do. Okay, but again, what? Okay, so he had 120 points, but would so what happens to your argument about stars? Like, he's a star, but what did that stardom get him? Like, he's not, like, in Calgary, he wasn't going to win the Stanley Cup, right? Like, he had 109 points. Actually, he didn't have 109. He had 104 points in Calgary. Was his highest. Anyways, I get your point, but again, I think you're wrong. Again, your definition or your use of the term superstar, I think, is subjective. And I think you're wrong when you say that you have to have a superstar to win the Stanley Cup. I think I don't think that Matthew Tkachuk is a superstar by definition. I don't think that Jack Eichel is a superstar by definition. My definition, anyway. And I think that if you're calling Matthew Tkachuk and Jack Eichel superstars, I think that if the Montreal Canadiens, as I've said, were to win the Stanley Cup with their current roster, I think that a guy like Nick Suzuki would certainly fit in the same category with either of those two guys. As a guy who is a point per game, is a point per game plus, and in addition, one of the better two-way forwards in the NHL. If the Canadiens were to win the Stanley Cup with him as their leader, I think, he would fit in the same category with both of those guys. Right. Or with, like you said, St. Louis or, again, I think there's a handful. I think there's probably 5 or 6 guys that we would call maybe a little bit more generational talents in the NHL right now. And I don't think that Eichel or Tkachuk are amongst those guys. And I don't think that, those guys, having those guys on your team guarantees you to win the cup. Right? And I think that every team in the NHL, you name an NHL team, that's you name an NHL playoff team, and I'll tell you the guy on that team who you would consider to be the superstar if they were to win the cup. What do you mean he's not as imposing as those guys? What does that even mean, Jason? What do you mean by imposing? Physically imposing? Matthew Tkachuk's not that physically imposing. Jack Eichel's not that physically imposing. Like in what way is, again, if the Vancouver Canucks won the Stanley Cup next year, right? You would say that Quinn Hughes is a superstar, right? If the there's any number of guys. So anyways, gang, that's a really long show. We've been on here forever, guys. It's been a really long night. I appreciate it. It's been a really good chat, which is why I stuck around as long as I did. But I do have to end the show there. Now, if you're on TikTok, guys, come on over to YouTube. The channel is Recliner Sports 4. Make sure that you subscribe. If you're watching here live, guys, the subscribe button is right down there. All you have to do is hit it. We do appreciate if you subscribe. It really does help us out. It does help the channel grow. It really does show me that you care. And if you do enjoy the content, I really would appreciate if you would subscribe. You can also hit the notification bell if you're inclined, and the thumbs up button as well. The thumbs up button helps us as well. If you do enjoy the content, that would be awesome. If you're watching in a replay, same applies. Please subscribe. Again, TikTok, and I keep saying TikTok. YouTube tells me that only 35 to 40% of you are actually subscribed. If you're watching the show and you do enjoy it and you want to come back, I appreciate that you can't always make it live. But you can subscribe. You can let us know that you're here. And you can continue to watch and hit that thumbs up button. I really, really, really would appreciate it. Thank you to everybody that came tonight. There's too many guys in the comment for me to go through and name them all. I do appreciate it. The conversation was good tonight. Send us some thumbs up. We've got 12 thumbs up so far. Surely we can do better than that. Thumbs up, subscribe, notification bell, all that good stuff. Please, please, please help us out. Help us grow. If you enjoy the content, it really does help us, and we do appreciate it. Thanks again so much. The Canadiens lose 5-4. A bit of a heartbreaker against the Columbus Blue Jackets. I think they deserved a better result, but they didn't get it, unfortunately. They're off for a few days now for the holiday break. They will be back on the 28th in the afternoon, so you'll have to be mixing in and out with the World Juniors games. We will see you then. We will be live with Habs After Dark on the 28th. The game, I believe, is against the Panthers. We will be live after the game, and we will see you then. Thanks so much. Happy holidays, guys. I hope you enjoy your break, you enjoy your Christmas, whatever other holiday you may celebrate with your family and your friends. Hopefully you have a healthy and happy break, and you have a good holiday season. Eat lots of turkey, lots of candy, lots of chocolates, lots of cookies, all that good stuff, and we will see you on the 28th. Thanks so much. Have a great night, and we will see you in the next one.
To Hoffman, Monahan parked in front, docks to Caulfield, fires, scores!
You are about to enter Habs After Dark with Recliner Sports.